Okay, we'll get going. Good evening, everybody. My name's Steve Kettle. I'm a director of a company called Clover Dental Group, and we are a company that specialise in squat dental fit out, refurbishment, new practices. Thank you for attending this evening. I'd like to introduce Dr. Bobby Bhandal from Squat Success. Many of you will know him. Through his practice over in Leamington Spa. So Bobby's going to do his presentation first, and then I'm going to follow on after that. If you do have any questions, if you could just put those in the chat, and then we'll pick those up at the end. It's probably going to be round about an hour for the whole webinar. So I'll just hand over to Bobby now, and I hope you enjoy it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Steve. So I'm just going to share my screen. So thank you everybody for attending today. My name is Bobby Bhandal, and I am a dentist of just over 10 years, and I have a successful squat practice in a place called Leamington Spa in the Midlands. And on top of that, I also teach and mentor and help other dentists how to open their own successful dental practices. So today, what I wanted to talk about was kind of the five key stages or five key steps that I think are really important when you're setting up a squat. And then Steve is going to talk a little bit more in detail about finding locations and about the building and a little bit about the planning side. So I just wanted to share this picture here. So this was 2022, just before COVID. And this was the building as it looked before we built our brand new practice. And it needed a fair bit of work doing. So you can see at the back here, there was a big demolition and a double-story extension that was done. And what we were able to create from this was this building that you can see right here. So this is our beautiful practice in the heart of Leamington, and this is where we work from at the moment. So when it comes to setting up a squat practice, in my head there are five key stages that you need to really focus on right at the beginning. The first one is strategic planning. So when you're going to think about starting to build your own practice, planning is absolutely essential with everything that you're going to do. If you don't plan, you will plan to fail. It is as simple as that. The second point is about finding a great location, design, and building your actual practice. So I'll cover a little bit of that, but Steve will talk about a little bit more in detail about that afterwards. The third key stage is marketing. When you're setting up a brand new practice, you have to be able to market yourself and also your practice. And if you can't do that, or you can't do that very well, there is no way that you will bring new patients into your practice. The fourth stage is building a team. And this is undoubtedly one of the hardest things. People always talk about it, the recruitment issues, etc. But building a team is fundamental to your success in building a successful practice. And then the final point is creating a five-star patient journey. Uh, that is absolutely essential because you've got to really stand out in a crowded market. And that is one of the ways you set yourselves apart when you're setting up something from scratch. So this is a book here by a guy called Simon Sinek, and some of you will have heard of him, some of you won't know, and it's all to do with start with why. So it all comes back to understanding why you want to do what you want to do. So everybody knows, what we do. We do dentistry. How do you do it? We pick up a drill and we drill teeth. But why do we do what we want to do? And it's really important when you're right at the beginning stages of setting up a squat, you understand why you want to set up your own practice. What do you want to build? What do you want to create in that practice? And that is essentially the basis building blocks of then your business plan. But you've got to understand why you want to do it in the first place. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about strategic planning and financial planning. One of the first things that you need to start thinking about when you're doing a business plan or setting up a squat practice is what are your actual goals with your business? What do you want to achieve when you open your brand new practice? And if you don't have goals, you don't know where to get to. You have no targets and you have no focus. So it's really important that you lay these out right at the beginning so you've got a action plan of how you can then get there. Just to give you some examples of goals that you can start thinking about, and these will then translate into your business plan. So, turnover, what would you like to be earning when you open your new practice? How much of a particular type of treatment, implants, Invisalign, would you like to be doing? How many surgeries would you want in that practice? What kind of profit would you like to make? How many clinical hours do you want to work? You're the principal now. You get to choose. It doesn't have to all be on you, and you can make it fit your lifestyle if that's what you want. Do you want it to be associate led or do you want it to be principal led? And later down the line, you've got expansion plans. So, do you want other sites? And the way you can start to break these down is thinking about short term, mid term, long term goals. So, short term, what would I like to achieve in the first 12 months of opening my practice? Whether that be a certain amount of patients registered, a certain amount of turnover, a certain amount of patients signed up to a plan membership. Midterm, you're looking at between that 1 to 3 years. What would you like to achieve there? Would I like to get my practice from 1 to 3 surgeries? Would I like to build an extra services, associate dentist? And then looking at your long-term goals, that's 5 years plus. So that's a point where you're thinking, well, okay, do I want a second site at that point, or do I just want to keep this ticking along as it's going? So one of the first things that you will have to do when you're starting out in dental practice is you will need to build a business plan. And a business plan is absolutely essential for a number of different reasons. The first reason is when you're setting up a practice, most of you will have to acquire finance, and the majority of people will do that through a bank, through a broker. And when you go to the bank asking for money, they will want to see a business plan, and they will want to see that cash flow forecasts are in there and that the plan is sound for them to enable you, for them to give you the money that you need. And the second reason is why you need a business plan is because the business plan gives you your goals and your targets, and it gives you an action plan of what you need to do in your business and if you're on track. So some of the key aspects of a business plan, what you need to put in there. So a business mission, aims and goals over a 3-year period. What do you want to achieve over those first few years? Where do you want your practice to be? What type of practice is it going to be? Is it private? Is it NHS? Is it associate led? Is it principal led? The demographics, who are the type of people that you want in your practice? What's the type of dentistry you want to be doing on those patients? Recruitment, who do you need in your team and how will that look over the next 3 years? How's that going to be built out? What will their salaries be? How will that impact your profit levels? Startup costs. So how much is it going to cost you to build your practice in the first place? And then the final thing is financial forecasts. So a lot of this stuff is stuff that you can do yourself because it's all in your head about what you want to build and how you want to build it. But the point where you're going to probably need to take some advice is when it comes to the financial aspects. So when you're looking at financial forecasts and startup costs, at that point, it's a good idea to have a discussion as a starting point with your accountant or with a broker who knows the dental industry, who can give you an idea of figures of what to expect when you're starting a new practice. So some of the key financial considerations when you're starting up a brand new practice. So from all the dentists that I'm teaching, mentoring and helping, this is typically what we're seeing at the moment. The average startup cost for a 2 to 3 surgery practice, including equipment, is in the region of around 250 to 350,000 pounds. And that depends massively on what type of equipment you have in, what type of building that you have. And that's generally assuming that it's not a freehold. Another common misconception is that banks are not lending at the moment for squat practices, which is just not true. So banks are actively lending money to squat practices, to startup practices right now. NatWest is a big one at the moment. And one of the final things when you're thinking about financial considerations, when you're starting up a squat is It's really, really, really important to account for your cash flow. So this is one of the biggest determinants of your success when you're starting up a new practice. And you need to make sure that you have a big enough buffer to be able to fund your business for a certain amount of time while you're building that business. And that can come in different forms. So that can either be by staying as an associate, using cash reserves that you already have, or taking it into account when you're taking out your loan, when you're taking out your finance. But what I see a lot is that dentists think about the startup costs and what they need to borrow to get the practice up and running, but then tend to forget about the next 6 months because running a dental practice is a very, very cash intensive business. So you have to make sure that there's enough of a buffer there and you can get to that break even point as quick as possible. So the next important point that I wanted to talk about was location, design, and planning. So as I said, Steve will go over this in a bit more detail at the end, but location is massively important. Ultimately, if somebody asked you to find a location and you saw that sign, you would have no idea what you're looking for or where to go. And it's the same with a dental practice. It is really, really simple. The more visible you are to the patients that you want to serve, the easier it is for those patients to find you and come into your practice. And secondly to that, the less amount of money you have to then spend on marketing because people can see where you are. So when you're going through the stages of finding a premises and looking at getting your practice built, it generally follows a pathway. So the first stage is to acquire a premises, and that could be either freehold or a leasehold or whatever you prefer. The second stage is going to be one or two things. Either if the building doesn't have a Class E use, planning use, you're going to have to get a planning permission to change that to a Class E. If it does have a Class E, you can skip that stage and you can essentially set up your practice within that building straight from the get-go, subject to having detailed design drawings for building control. So those are technical detailed drawings that an architect or a dental equipment company will produce for you, and you will then use those to build your practice. And then once all that's in place, you can start building. So one of the most commonly asked questions that I get is, who do you use to do all of this? Do you use an architect? Do you use a specialist dental equipment company, big build teams? Who is best? And there is no one right answer to that. It varies massively for everybody. And it depends on the type of building that you have and how much building work needs to be done. And it depends on you yourself and how much time you have to input yourself into that project, or whether you would prefer to have somebody take control and be able to do all of that for you and take the stress away from you. But as I said, Steve will cover a bit more of this later on. The next point that I want to talk about is marketing and personal branding. So this is absolutely essential when you're starting up a brand new practice. So this is our brand that you can see here, Avenue Dental. And one of the common misconceptions that when it comes to branding is that you just assume you get a logo and that's it, that's your brand, but that is not true whatsoever. A brand is everything that you embody as a practice. So that's your ethos, how you look after your patients, how you care for them, what you do for them. In that practice, how you run your team, how you build your team, and how well you look after people. All of that put together is your brand. It's not just as simple as having a nice logo. One of the biggest things I tell dentists is that what the simplest thing that you can do to get patients through your door, and the simplest thing that you can do before you even start the journey of opening your own practice, is having a personal brand or a presence on social media. So this is one of the dentists who I'm working with at the moment. He's a very, very successful associate dentist. His practice is limited to Invisalign and smile makeovers. And he derives 100% of his patient base through his social media. So he does not have to pay for any form of marketing whatsoever, no paid marketing. And essentially, when he starts his squat practice, he will be a step ahead of most people because patients will just come to him. He won't have to go out and find patients. And that is true leverage and the power of social media. Um, but it's one of these things that you have to really, really, just start. Everybody has to start somewhere, and there's lots of different ways around this, and you can research it, and there's lots of great books in the industry about this. But it is massively important, and that translates then into your practice social media as well as you grow your business. So, what is marketing? And marketing essentially is the generous act of helping someone solve a problem, their problem. So, patients have problems with their teeth, and our job is to help them solve their problem. That is exactly what we do, and that is what marketing is. One of the biggest things that you have to do is define your unique selling point. So when you're setting up a practice, one of the things to really think about is in the area where you're going to set up your practice, if there's 5 other practices that are within a 5 to 10 mile radius around me, why would a patient want to come to my practice over any other practice in the same area? What is different about me? What is different about my practice? What are we offering that other practices can't offer? That essentially forms your story, and that is all part of your why. And that is massive in your marketing presence and getting across your story about why you're doing what you're doing and why it's different and why patients should come to you over anybody else. For us in our practice, it is, it's very different. It's very unique. We have a locked door service. We have no reception. The service is very, very unique. Patients come into a lovely, lounge. They get to relax, have a cup of tea, coffee. All new patients are booked in for an hour, and the customer care, the patient care, and the service is like none other. And all the patients comment on that. The way we designed the practice was so it does not feel or look or smell like a dental practice whatsoever. So when patients come in, it's a very calm, relaxing environment. And that has helped us build our practice massively because that really sets us apart from all the other practices that have opened in the area. And our area is very competitive. So we were the third squat to open within a smallish town, the last one, within the space of 12 months. And despite that, we're still doing extremely well. So a really, really good exercise to think about when you're marketing or thinking about marketing your practices is to create avatars of your ideal patients. Who is the ideal patient that you want? For example, an implant patient or an Invisalign patient. And writing down exactly what these patients, what do they want? Where do they hang out? What's their disposable income? How do we reach them? Through what methods? How do they prefer to communicate? All of these little steps build you an avatar of your ideal patients, which go into your business plan. And once you have that, then you know how to go ahead and market to those patients. And when it comes to marketing, there's all sorts of different varieties of marketing your practice. It's broadly split up into traditional marketing, and then you have digital marketing. So traditional marketing is things like newspaper, magazines, billboards, whatever it is. And then you've got digital marketing, and that can be paid or unpaid. So unpaid would be things like your organic social media and SEO, and then paid marketing such as Instagram, Facebook ads, and Google pay-per-click. And when you're determining your avatars, you then have to determine which way am I going to get these patients in? Is it going to be through traditional or is it going to be through that digital? And depending on the type of patient will determine, where you put your money and your budget in terms of marketing. But one of the biggest things I would say is that marketing your practice well will be one of the biggest determinants of your success when you're starting out a brand new practice. And it really, really all comes back down to how well do you stand out in a crowded market. There are lots and lots of new practices opening up. There are lots of squats. Some of them are doing well, some of them are not doing well. And how do you make yourself be one of the practices that is one of the ones that really, really succeeds? And it all comes back down to the planning. So, take that step back and think, how do I make myself stand out to be better than whatever's already available where I'm setting up? So one of the other things I want to talk about is recruitment and team building, because this is one of the most difficult things when you're setting up a squat practice. However, it is definitely one of the most important, hence why it's in this presentation. Because without your team, you are absolutely nothing. We are dentists, we do dentistry, but we are not the first point of call when a patient reaches our practice. We are not the ones answering the phones. We are not the ones communicating with patients. And we're not the ones doing the majority of the care. Most of the time it is everybody who is in our team that does everything to build our practice with us. But we like to think that we're the most important because we're the dentist, but honestly, we are not. It is the other people around us, and I can't stress that enough. So some of the questions that you'll have when you're starting up a practice is, who do I need? When do I need them? How many people do I need? How much do I pay them? Where do I get them from? Who does the contracts? What if they're not performing well? How do I fire somebody when I've never done that before? How do I have a difficult conversation? Uh, all of these things are things that you can think about when you're setting up your business plan. When you're starting up, thinking about how many days you're going to be running your practice, then how well does that look? How many people am I going to need? How many nurses will I need? And one of the biggest tips I would say is that you want to make sure you plan 6 months ahead for wherever you are today. Because I'll give you an example. In my practice, I started the practice very, very lean on the team, and the practice grew quicker than I expected. And the problem that that gave me was the existing team ended up becoming burnt out, because by the time I needed to recruit, it then takes another few months to find the right person to bring into that team. And by that time, everybody else is burnt out because they're doing so much and they're picking up all the extra work. So always be thinking next step, what's going to happen in 6 months, and I should start putting that in place now. So a couple of things here. When you're looking at recruiting a team, the things that I look at, some tips are, number one, is the person capable for the role or not? So if they're capable, brilliant, they're the right person for the role. If they're not capable, it's the wrong person for that job. Second thing is, are they efficient? And if they're capable and they're efficient, brilliant. If they're capable but they're not efficient, then that's a training issue. And you have to make sure you've got training pathways set up within your practice to get your teams to a certain level as quick as possible. And if both of those are in place, but your team members aren't motivated, then that all comes down to the culture in your practice. What is the culture that you have built in your practice? Your team will not be motivated every single day, but the only way you keep your team motivated is by building a really, really strong business culture within your practice that really looks after your team well. And that's what keeps them motivated. How well are they involved? How well are they trained? How much opportunities do they have to grow? How much do they feel a part of your business? Your aim should be to make the people that work in your business feel like it is their business. They should feel so motivated that they come to work feeling like, I am a part owner in this business. And then that's how you get excellent performance, out of your team and as little problems as possible. So recruitment should always be constant when you're setting up your practice. Even now, before you're setting up your practice, you should always be thinking, who do I think would be a great fit for my practice when I set my practice up? You probably already know the people who you would want in your practice right now before you've even set it up. It's not a good idea to go poaching staff, but often what will happen is people, when they find out that you're setting up a practice, will approach you. And that's a great way for you to recruit when you're setting up a practice from scratch. The second thing is hire slow, fire fast. The first time you fire somebody, it's always going to be the most difficult, but it does get easier. But it is really, really important that if somebody is not a right fit for the practice, you fire them very, very quickly, because that person could essentially destroy your team, your morale, and destroy your reputation very, very quickly. And the final point is, when you're setting up your team in your practice, always, always, always get professional advice on your contracts. And again, I can't stress that enough. Do not use templates. Make it specific to your practice and what you need, and take advice either from a HR specialist or from a HR lawyer. So this is a really, really important point to think about when you're starting up a new practice or a new business, and it's looking at it from a different perspective. So when you set up your practice, you want to make sure that you are the owner of the business and not the operator. And you can only scale a business once you start to implement this. And what I mean by that is that as the main dentist setting up a squat practice, you cannot be everything. You cannot be in surgery 5, 6 days a week. And on top of that, running the business and being a practice manager and doing everything else associated with the business. Because if you have that mentality, you will not be able to grow or scale your business effectively. So you have to become the operator. You have to make sure you take time out to spend working on your business, not in your business. And the final thing that I'd like to talk about is, what is the one factor which has contributed most to our success in our practice so far to date? And I just want to play this little video here, which just shows a little clip done by our marketing team, but this is a patient. So apologies, there is meant to be volume here, but it won't play in the presentation. And it is this. It is the 5-star patient journey and experience. So you have to create that experience. Dentistry is becoming much, much more experience-based than it is clinical-based. So patients are putting a bigger emphasis on how well they're treated, how they're made to feel, how the practice makes them feel, over the actual clinical treatment itself. And I can't stress that enough. And you have to build that into your practice when you're setting up your practice from scratch. And the great thing about setting up a squat is overtaking over another business is that you get to have a lot of fun with it. You get to be playful, and you can create whatever you want, however that looks for you. We have our way in our practice of doing it, but everybody will have their own little way of doing it, their own touches, their own things that are important to them, and what they feel is important is part of their 5-star patient journey. But you have to make that journey, really, really special for your patients. And as a testament to that, this is actually much higher now. This was an old slide. But within a year, we became the second highest rated practice on Google. We're still 5-star rated, within a year of opening. And just to let you know where we're at with our practice. So we're a year and a half in. We have myself, an associate, dental therapist, and we're taking on a second associate, 2 surgeries. And within a year of opening, one surgery was turning over at a run rate of £500,000 a year at the moment, through a mix of general cosmetic and implant dentistry, and that is growing month by month as we speak. So thank you everybody for listening. So I hope you took some points from that and found it useful. And I just wanted to mention that I'm going to be running a day on the 13th of July in Birmingham at the Grand Hotel. And it's going to be a full day dedicated to starting out in practice. And Steve will be there as well. And we'll be covering all of these in a lot more detail on that day. The cost of the day is normally £149 per person. But anybody who wants to come through this webinar, if you contact either me or guys at Clover, you can come free of charge, no problem. Thank you. I'll pass back to Steve.
Thank you, Bobby. Okay. Cesar, can you put my presentation on, please? Okay, thanks for joining us today. So this is the second webinar I've done. So my background is that I started life as a plumbing and heating engineer, and then I ran a building maintenance company for about 25 years, and saw the opportunity really just before COVID to get involved with dental fit out. Um, and we did our first practice for Professor Paul Tipton over in Altrincham. I'll show you some slides on that a little bit later, but yeah, there's a lot of involvement when you start off a squat practice and the building element side of things. So I just want to talk you through that. So if we could put the next slide on, Cesar, thank you. So as Bobby alluded to, it's in terms of finding the right location. You know, mapping it all out. How many surgeries are you looking at? What sort of landscape do you want to be in? Is it retail, which is becoming more popular now, or is it in a commercial environment? Parking's a big one at the moment where you've got free parking. Checking the population of an area. Um, Convenience, accessibility is trending at the moment. We also look at competitor analysis. So, what other practices are operating within the area? What do they charge? What are their rates? That sort of thing. Also looking at, if you're looking at renting, taking out a lease, what's the going rate? Because often agents inflate the rate for a property. So when I looked at recently, they were looking at something like 25,000 a year rent, when actually the going rate was only 14,000 for that particular area. So there's a lot to think about when you're looking at the right location. Okay, next slide, Cesar. So just do some competitor analysis. This is one local to me, in Cheadle, and it was all the different practices that are operating in this area, whether it's a mixed practice, NHS. Is it a crowded market? Is there too many dentists operating within this area? Do we need to look at other areas? So I would just, if you're looking at setting up in a certain area, just look at what else is out there and, what they're charging, their prices, etc. Okay, next slide, Cesar. So when you're looking at lease, some of you might be looking at freehold and buying, but if you're looking at a lease, dentists are very good tenants for landlords, because they see them as someone that's going to be there for the long haul. So the longer the lease, the better negotiation you've got. Obviously, when you're doing your fit out and you've got CQC, that takes a little bit more time to do. So you could be looking at trying to negotiate maybe 6 months, 12 months free rent from the landlord. Also go to a recommended property lawyer to draw up your lease. So I have a number of those particular lawyers that I put in touch with dentists. Other things to check is, what is the service charge that's payable? So that can be anything from, maybe £1,000 to £3,000 a year. Also check what the business rates are. So sort of in the town centres, city centres, they can be quite high. So it's always worth looking at that. Okay, next slide, Cesar. So just have a look at the layout of your new practice, like Bobby alluded to look at an architect to do some drawings for you in the layout. Once you've got that, you will need to put that through the local building control department and the fire officer to get approval. Without that, you cannot start the build. So that is absolutely crucial. Then also, if you can talk to an RPA as well to get them on board. Look at an equipment supplier for your chairs, compressor, suction motors, cabinetry, X-ray, etc. Next slide. So this is just one that we did about 12 months ago. So we got all the architectural drawings done. This was based on the brief from the dentist. So as you can see, you've got like your waiting area, reception, X-ray, decon, kitchen, three surgeries. We just fitted out the first surgery with a chair. The other two surgeries have got all the all the services are there, waiting, ready. As the practice builds up patients, we can just drop in those chairs and cabinetry. But at least it gives you and those would be the plans that you would send over to the building control department so that they can approve them, and the fire department as well. Okay, so here's our next slide. So once you're looking at, you've got all your plans sorted out, you then need to go out to tender for quotes from contractors. I would always advise that you go out to contractors who have experience in doing dental work. I think I've had about 3 calls today from dentists who have got builders involved, but they've never done dental work. It's a different game altogether. So I would advise you to definitely go to builders, contractors who've got experience in doing that type of work. Also go out for maybe 3 quotes from local contractors as well is always good, because contractors that have to travel long distances, there's always added on costs like overnight stays and more project management costs, etc. So if you can find 3 local builders, that's always an advantage. Contractors also need to be aware of the CQC regulations. So obviously there's so many regulations now that the CQC check on the building works, and you want to make sure that when you have your inspection, it passes and there's no problems. So again, contractors who are familiar with that type of work. Okay, Cesar, next slide, please. So I would always get a price schedule from a contractor. So you literally know exactly what they're pricing for, and it's item by item. I know a lot of contractors just say the cost is 250,000, and then you don't actually know what you're getting. So if you've got a schedule of works that's been written up that says exactly what they're pricing for, as you can see from this one, it's literally every socket, light fitting, door frame, and you then have more cost certainty from the contractor, because if he tries to then say, okay, I need some more variations, there's additional costs for this work, you can say, well, you've actually priced this in your tender document. And I see so many dentists that just take a contractor on and then they actually charge, they try to charge them more for variations. So I think that's actually quite crucially important. Okay, next one. So if you've got a builder and you're looking for someone to, project management, you're very busy, you've got lots of things going on, then consider appointing a project manager. That will help you achieve cost certainty. The project manager can produce a schedule of works like I've just showed you. They can go out with a tender package to the builders, so out to 3 builders. Once those quotes come back in, they can analyze that to make sure that the builders are pricing like for like, and just do a tender evaluation analysis. So often there's discrepancies in the tender document that comes back. I've seen prices where one contractor might be £100,000 cheaper, which why are they so much cheaper? That could cause lots of problems later on. So a project manager can do all that, look at all that. It can also ask the contractor to provide a program of work. So how long is the project going to take? We need to know. Is it going to be 2 months? Is it going to be 3 months? And so we need to know each week. If it's a 3-month project, we need to know each week what work's going to be undertaken, what work's going to be completed. and that can be signed off by the project manager and the valuations approved. So the project manager would do normally a weekly attendance to the site, check what work's been done, and then look at the valuation that maybe the contractor wants to draw down from the job. And then also at the end, which is always the problem, is the snagging, the sign off. We've got another job and they've not quite finished. So project manager would snag the job, make sure that all the works are completed before we get the CQC to do the inspection. The contractor or the project manager would also work with the dental equipment supplier so that they know exactly when they can come in and put the chairs in, put the cabinetry in, put all the suction motor, the compressor. They will want to know exactly when they could come in. So it's the coordination of all those things that go on that the project manager would do. Okay, next slide. So this is a typical program of work. So what we'd say is that the job would start in, say, as you can obviously see there, the 5th of June. And then what we'd need to know is exactly what's going to happen on those weeks from week 1 through to week 12. As you can see where it's highlighted in yellow, these are the different elements of work that will take place. And the project manager would make sure that that work has been completed. If it hasn't been completed, the contractor doesn't get paid the amount of money that maybe they're over committing in terms of the valuation that they put in. But we would work to this program of works to make sure that we are hitting the target. It's a 12-week project and we need to have it completed and finished by then. Okay, see that next slide, please. Another thing that a lot of dentists don't factor in is that when you buy a building, lease a building, then, there is something called a capital tax allowance. That's the intrinsic parts of the building that often aren't included when the lease is taken on or the purchase. So things that are fixed, like radiators, door frames, all sorts of things, and that it's something that you can get a lot of allowances back. Now, I use a company in London that do this for you, but it can save you a lot on your tax bill at the end of the year. So just look into that capital tax allowance. Okay, next slide. So this is a case study of one that we did, Clover Dental did. This was a project based in Altrincham. It was, as you can see there, it was hairdressers, closed during COVID. We basically started turning that into a squat practice. So you can see there it's an open space, nice and clean, next to a Waitrose supermarket. It was 3 surgery dental practice, 12-week project. And this was kind of before we just started. It was a clean surface. If you can go to the next slide, Suzanne. So you can see there, that's the Waitrose store on the left. There is health and beauty place next door, and then we were the next building up. So good footfall, free parking, affluent area, absolutely ideal for a dental squat practice. Just takes you through some of the images there when we were fitting it out. So we were on that job for 12 weeks, but never went off it. It was start to finish till completion. If you go to the next slide. So this was it, the final phase. We had and when we were doing the building work, we had a big image in the window, dental surgery, new dental practice opening up soon, taking new patients, and people were, phoning up, booking in. So we were building up the patients' bookings before it opened. Again, we had lots of signage in the window. Nice reception, as Bobby said, coffees, coffees when they came in, relaxed environment, um, very clean looking, a nice place to come to. So this, yeah, was a 12-week project. I think it was about 195,000 in total for the full fit out. And this practice is doing really well at the moment. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's it. Brilliant. Any questions? If we can just put those in the chat. Um, we will send you a copy of this presentation. But if you've got any questions, that'd be great. We can answer those now. Q&A, have we got any? Would it be possible to? Right, Bobby, would it be possible to attend virtually for your course on the 13th?
Unfortunately not. The days are not going to be live streamed, so we don't have that facility at the moment. The day is possibly going to be recorded, so if it is, then that's something we can look at, and I'll reach back out to you, Tris, afterwards, if that's the case.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to join on Bobby's course, please let us know as soon as possible. I think it'll be a really good day, and a good insight to, opening up a new squat practice. We've got a few more questions now. Okay. So we've got, are the estate agents the best people to contact for renting? Well, I actually offer a service where I've got a network of a lot of the agents around the country where I can actually help you with the property search. So I can, if you're looking at a certain area and you want to look at a certain demographic of where you want to be, then I can talk to a lot of the agents who sometimes I get them when they're off market, so they've not actually been advertised yet. But yeah, I mean the letting agents are the ones to go to really locally. So next question is, can I get further information on your course? So is that for you, Bobby? I think.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll just drop the link to the website.
Okay.
There you go. I've just sent the link to my website. So I'll pop it on there. And henna, yeah, that's absolutely fine.
You've got.
I'll drop you an email. That's no problem at all. But
Do you want to answer those, Bobby? Because you can see them, can't you?
yeah, Sonia, how do we contact you? Is that for the course or is that for Steve? Yeah. So, yeah, so I'll just explain a little bit more about the course. So, the day I'm running on the 13th of July is essentially a full 1 day event, just breaking down all the kind of things I spoke about today, but in a bit more detail. So that's it's like a taster event, and if you're thinking about opening a squat, the real aim should be at the end of that day to know, is this for me or is it not? Because it's not always the right option for everybody. And then the second thing is that if it is for you, then it provides a basic blueprint then for the action points that you need to start doing or thinking about to start setting up your own squat. And then as a side to that, I do run a full training course and mentorship for dentists who are setting up their own practices. So we've got about 8 dentists in the group at the moment who are all setting up practices in the middle of building, and some that have just recently opened and doing very, very well all over the country. And I can explain a little bit more about that to you if you want to connect. So What I will do is I'll get your details from Steve and I'll pass it on to you. But what I'll do is I'll just drop you a link to the website and you can also contact me through there if you want to. And with the business plan, so who can help with your business plan? The first person is yourself, without a doubt. So when you're thinking about your business plan, what often happens is some accountant firms and some financial companies will do your business plan for you, which some dentists prefer. The only issue I have with that is that they will charge you a certain amount of money and they will produce you a business plan, but often they don't actually ask you what you want to achieve or what you're building as a business or what you want to get out of it yourself. So the first point of call when you're building your business plan is always to start thinking about it yourself and start getting that all down on paper about all the kind of things I spoke about earlier. What type of practice do you want to build? How do you want it to look? What type of patients do you want to be treating? What type of dentistry do you want to be doing? And then once you've got an idea of all of that in your head, then I would go to your accountant or a dental specialist accountant to have a chat a little bit more about the details of the financials and the financial forecasts. And that's very specific to everybody, depending on what it's going to cost you to set up your practice. But if you want any more help with that, you can reach out to me. And as part of the course or the people that train and mentor, I share copies of my own business plan and cash flow forecast as part of that.
Bobby, I think you've got a couple of more there, Sonia and another one.
So yeah, the mentoring service is part of the longer training course. So it generally runs over 5 months. But I've dropped you the link to the website, Sonia, so you can contact me through there. And somebody at the bottom has said, I would like to join on the 13th, but you are anonymous. So I don't know who you are, but if you can either reach out to the guys at Clover or you can contact me directly, I'll just send you my email address.
One more, Bobby, there for you.
The mentorship, so it's generally £900 per month, for 5 months. So that's the way it works. So it spans over 5 months, and it's there's different ways of learning within that group. So we have an online portal, and within that portal there is videos of absolutely everything about how to set your practice up, A to Z. And second to that, we have group calls every 2 weeks on Zoom with everybody in the community who's setting up their own practices. So in those groups, everybody brings everything. So their problems, any issues they're having, any help that they want, and we go through it all together. And then we also have a live day in person where everybody comes for a full day of teaching, and gets to visit the practice and see our whole team here and see how we've set everything up. And there's lots of other things that we're building in the background. So discounts with suppliers, equipment companies, etc. So there's lots of access to that. And there is access to contacts for everything that you'll need, and all the right people to go to get your practice up and running.
Okay. I got any more? No, I think that's it. Have we got any more questions? No, brilliant. Okay. Thank you for all attending. We'll send a recording to everybody and we'll look at doing another one probably in another after the summer.